Hey guys, Vegito here, and welcome back to the Potara Podcast. And today, we'll be heading back to the world of MHA with one of our fan favorite stories, being What If Deku and Shoto were twins? Or, as it's been coined by myself and some fans, Izuku Todoroki. Now, before we get started, I'd like to remind you to do all the YouTube stuff, such as leaving a like and dropping a comment to help feed the algorithm, which will help the video and the channel as a whole reach a wider audience. Also, if you like the content, be sure to subscribe, since it's free. It also helps the channel out tremendously. Now with that said, let's get started. We resume our tale right where we left off, with All Might discussing the rest of the battle trial matches, with luckily there being no major injuries in his timeline, due to Izuku having access to higher percentages of One for All that he can use safely, and access to full cowling earlier than canon, with All Might leaving rather quickly afterwards since his time limit for his hero form was about to run out. But this is only known by Izuku, with the rest of their classmates thinking All Might just really had somewhere important to be. Afterwards, Class 1A get changed out of their hero costumes and head back to class, attending the rest of their afternoon classes before heading home for the day. The next day, on their way to school, the twins are swarmed by the press after they learn that All Might has joined the UA faculty and figure they can also interview the twin sons of Endeavor in the process. Although Shoto doesn't really give any comment to either All Might joining the faculty or to them being Endeavor's children, especially the latter. However, Izuku ends up being completely overwhelmed by all the questions, as Kendo takes notice of this and decides to try and get Izuku out of a bad situation, saying to the reporters, "Can't you guys see you're completely overwhelming him? Come on, Izuku, let's get you out of there. Shoto, you come too." With the two-toned boy doing as told as Kendo leads Izuku out to the massive crowd of reporters. After the trio gets away from the reporters, Izuku hugs his best friend, thanking the orange-haired girl from getting... Izuku hugs his best friend, thanking the orange-haired girl for getting him out of there when she did, with Kendo responding with, "You're welcome, Izuku. I noticed you were in trouble and decided to step in. That's what best friends are for, right?" Afterwards, the trio then start heading to class, while Izuku starts feeling like he and Kendo could be more than just friends. Aizawa then approaches the reporters, saying that All Might isn't on campus today, and that they need to leave. After hearing this, reporters try to follow Aizawa in to learn more about All Might joining UA's faculty, and how the twin sons of Endeavor are adjusting to UA. But that activates UA's defense barrier, locking out the reporters. Later, in homeroom, Aizawa says that the class needs to choose a class representative, with the whole class trying to volunteer to be the class rep. Although Ida immediately shuts all of them down, saying that they should decide this democratically by voting for the class rep. After some time, Aizawa tallies the votes and reveals that Izuku managed to win the class rep election, with 4 votes from Kendo, Ida, Uaraka, and Kirishima, while Kendo manages to get the second highest amount of votes from Izuku, Mina, and Hagakure, scoring her the vice rep position. Afterwards, Izuku and Kendo then head towards the front of the room, hugging, as the orange-haired girl says, "Izuku, if I had to lose this election, I'm glad it was to you. Honestly, Kendo, you probably would have done a better job at this than me. Izuku, we've been best friends for years at this point. You can call me Itsuka if you really want to." "Right, Itsuka it is." Man, it'll take some getting used to. Mia then notices this exchange, thinking to herself, "I can totally use this as shipping fuel. I'll call it Izukendo." Kirishima then says, I'm cool with Izuku leading the class. After all, the way he fought his twin and disabled his attacks with that uber-powerful technique of his was so manly. And later, at lunch, Izuku sits with Uraraka, Ida, and Kendo, with the four friends deciding to discuss the class rep election, with Izuku revealing that he's a bit nervous about the election results. But both Kendo and Ida reassure him on this decision, with a blue-haired boy saying that Izuku will be great. His courage and quick thinking under his stress will make him a worthy leader, revealing them to be the reasons why Ida voted for him. Kendo then adds that Izuku's got this, and that he needs to stop doubting himself of so much. Uraraka then points out that didn't Ida want to be rep really badly, adding that he definitely looks the part. Although Ida says that wanting a job and being suited for it are two different things, adding that observing his family's hero agency has taught him that. Izuku then asks about it, wondering what his family does. Uraraka then guesses that Ida's filthy rich, with Ida being afraid that people would treat him differently if they found out about his family, with Izuku, Kendo, and Uraraka looking at him, as Ida explains that his family have been pro-heroes for generations, and that the turbo hero Ingenium is his elder brother, and that as the second oldest Ida's son, he strives to be just like his brother. However, Ida thinks it's too soon for him to step into a real leadership role, citing Izuku as an example, saying that he was able to see what the judges were looking for in the practical exam when he saved Uraraka, adding that a class rep needs that sort of insight. Kendo then says that Ida's right, so Izuku shouldn't doubt his skill as a rep, and she's not saying that because they've been best friends for years. Izuku then thanks his friends for the support, as an alarm goes off, signaling that someone has broken into UA's campus, as it's total pandemonium in the cafeteria, with everyone trying to evacuate UA. From here, events line up with canon for a bit, with Ida noticing that it's just the media outside, with him managing to get to everyone's attention on this matter thanks to Uraraka's zero gravity and his engine boost, which manages to calm everyone down. Afterwards, back in class, Izuku and Kendo announce that they need to assign the other class officers, but since Izuku is more confident here, and has Kendo reassuring him, Izuku decides to keep his post as class rep. From here, events can line up with canon, with All Might still stopping a few villains on his way to school, which still ends up spending a lot of the time he has in his muscle form for the day. After lunch, Aizawa announces that today's training will be different, and that they'll be doing rescue training, with the older man adding that they'll be supervised by 3 pros. All Might, himself, and another faculty member will be keeping tabs on the class today. Izuku then wonders if it's because of yesterday's break-in. Aizawa then explains that they'll be dealing with natural disasters, shipwrecks, and other things of the sort. The class then gets to talking about how this will be, although Aizawa says he isn't finished yet, saying that what they wear will entirely be up to them. Aizawa then says they'll be taking a bus to get to the off-campus facility where their training will take place. Afterwards, everyone changes into their hero costumes, with Izuku and Kendo trying to maintain order when boarding the bus, until they learn about the bus's open floor layout, with Izuku sitting with Kendo, Tsuyu, Kirishima, Kaminari, Aoyama, Mina, and Ida. I decided to move around Sato to where Ojiro was canonically, and decided to have Kendo next to Izuku to further expand on their dynamic. Tsuyu then gets to talking, and points out the similarities between Izuku's quirk and All Might's, even though he's the son of Endeavor. And since Izuku hasn't hurt himself using One for All as much, Kirishima joins in on pointing out the similarities between Izuku's quirk and All Might's. Kirishima then says that it must be awesome to have a simple augmentation type quirk, adding that he'll be able to do a lot of flashy stuff with it. Kirishima adds that while his hardening is super strong and can destroy villains in a fight, it isn't very flashy. Izuku then says that his quirk is definitely pro-material, with Kirishima thanking his friend for the sentiment. Mina then decides to ask Kendo and Izuku how they became friends, with Kendo saying that they met when they were 4, when they started their martial arts classes together, and they've been best friends ever since. Mina then asks Kendo if she has a crush on Izuku, with Izuku's face turning as red as a tomato after hearing this, although Kendo denies this, saying that she and Izuku are just best friends. After all this, and after Bakugo tries getting into an argument with his classmates, after Tsuyu pointed out that he likely wouldn't be that popular as a pro due to his bad attitude, Aizawa says that they've arrived at the USJ. The students hopping off the bus and seeing the space hero, 13, outside waiting to greet them and bring them into the USJ. From here, events line up with canon, with 13 explaining about the various zones of the USJ, and explain that some quirks can kill. Afterwards, the lights go out, as in the center of the USJ, a strange portal opens up as a hand reaches out of it, revealing a man with a giant hand on his face, and a bunch of various other villains, as Aizawa tells 13 to protect the students while he deals with the villains. Afterwards, the villain with the misty body announces their intentions to kill All Might. From here, events line up with canon for a bit, until Kurogiri appears behind 1A and 13. Kurogiri starts scattering the students around the USJ, sending Izuku, Kendo, Mineta, and Tsuyu into the shipwreck zone. Kendo and Izuku fall into the water and are about to be attacked by a villain with a shark quirk, as Izuku activates full cowling at 5% to try and fight off the villain, with Izuku telling Kendo to get herself to safety, although Kendo says she isn't going to leave her best friend behind. After this, Izuku fires a smash at the villain, with Kendo saying that they should try to get to the surface, with the pair being wrapped up in a tongue, with it being revealed to be Tsuyu, with her carrying Mineta and taking the pair of friends to the surface, or placing them on the ship. Mineta then joins the pair after he made a perverse comment about Tsuyu's breaths. Afterwards, Izuku thanks Tsuyu for saving him, and due to Izuku being more confident here, Izuku actually calls her Sue instead of Asui. The group get to talking and try to figure out a way to deal with all of the villains, with Izuku remembering what Kurogiri said about how All Might was supposed to be here, but there being no sign of him, so there must have been a change in plans. Izuku then points out that they knew their whole schedule and who would be here, adding that they must have gotten into the school files while they were stuck in the cafeteria, while the teachers were trying to get the media off of school grounds, meaning the villains were waiting for the perfect time to attack. From here, events line up with canon for a bit, with Ida managing to make his way out to the USJ after 13 and the others, saved from Kurogiri's scattering attack, managed to distract Kurogiri long enough to let Ida escape. Izuku then points out that the villains likely don't know their quirks, otherwise Tsuyu would have been sent into the fire zone. Afterwards, the four try to devise a strategy while discussing their quirks, with Kendo getting an idea they could potentially use. Izuku uses his quirk to attack the villains using the wind pressure his quirk generates, while Kendo uses their giant hands as makeshift wings, with Tsuyu wrapping her tongue around the pair to keep Kendo in place on Izuku, while Mineta throws his sticky balls at the villains to trap them in place. The four begin executing their plan, with Kendo and Izuku being wrapped together tightly with Tsuyu's tongue, with Izuku turning completely red in the face, while Kendo also gets a bit flustered at this too, and also a bit of pain, as it feels like she's basically getting punched in the boob. Izuku then activates full cowling at 10% as he and Kendo jump off the boat, as Izuku then uses a Delaware Smash, blasting wind pressure into the water and making a makeshift whirlpool. Afterwards, Mineta then starts throwing his pop-off spheres into the whirlpool. Afterwards, thanks to Kendo using her quirk as makeshift wings, allows the floor to get completely to safety, rather than still being in the water and potentially prone to attack from the villains. Afterwards, Izuku, Kendo, Tsuyu, and Mineta arrive back near the entrance to the USJ, with Uraraka and Mina being rather happy to see them, with Tsuyu unwrapping Izuku and Kendo, as the orange-haired girl says to Tsuyu, "Ow! Tsu, did you have to wrap us together so tightly?" Tsuyu then apologized to Kendo for this, explaining that the only way to do it safely was to wrap them really tightly. Mina then says, "So, what was going on with you two?" With Izuku and Kendo being flustered from this, with Mineta asking Izuku how it felt to have a girl's boobs on his back, with Kendo smacking Mineta in the head for this like she does with Monoma in canon, before Uraraka offers to get Kendo an ice pack for her potentially bruised boobs. From here, the rest of the events at the USJ can play out as canon. However, due to Izuku, Kendo, Tsuyu, and Mineta getting completely to safety rather than being in the water, well, Shigaraki doesn't get to almost decay Tsuyu and Mineta. But due to All Might giving Izuku one for all 5 months earlier than canon, he has to use a lot more power to defeat the USJ Nomu, meaning All Might is likely more injured than his canon self. Afterwards, Detective Tsukauchi, All Might's friend in the police force, arrives to assess if any students are injured, and while Kendo's boobs are bruised from their escape plan, that's more of a minor injury, and there's also Aizawa and 13's injuries while they're already at the hospital. Afterwards, due to no one in 1A getting any major injuries, the twins and Kendo head home, after Kendo receives an ice pack for her bruised boobs. A couple days pass, and before homeroom starts, Mina asks Tsuyu if they're going to have a substitute. But then Aizawa walks into the room all bandaged up, as the class is rather surprised to see their teacher come in while being so injured. Aizawa then explains that the UA Sports Festival is about to begin. Class is excited at this, but Jiro asks if it's such a good idea to hold the sports festival so soon after the villains snuck inside of UA's campus. Kendo then adds that they could attack again once they're all in the same place. Aizawa addresses these concerns by saying, "Apparently the administration thinks this is a good way to show that the threat's been handled." Aizawa then adds that they're beefing up security compared to past years. Aizawa then says that they can't cancel this event because of a few villains. From here, the rest of Aizawa's talk about the sports festival plays out like canon. However, before he leaves, he asks Izuku and Kendo to see him up front, as Aizawa reveals that the day before the sports festival, the class reps from each of the first-year classes will gather together for a meeting, mainly to discuss the events of the USJ and prepare for the sports festival. From here, events line up with canon, with Izuku, Ida, and Kendo learning about Uraraka's reasoning for becoming a hero, that being to earn money to help her family. Here, 2 weeks pass, as Class 1A uses this time to train for the UA Sports Festival, while Izuku mainly uses his time to practice a new technique he's been developing with the help of Kendo and their sensei. With this technique involving a hard strike to an opponent's sternum that's able to temporarily cut off air to the opponent's lungs. Izuku then decides to name this technique the Roosevelt Smash, after one of the toughest American presidents. We then arrive at a day before the sports festival, as Kendo approaches Izuku after class, reminding the crimson-haired boy that they're supposed to head over to Class 1B to hold that class rep meeting that Aizawa told them about. Izuku getting up and heading over to Class B. After a few minutes, the two friends arrive at Class 1B for the meeting, as they see 4 other people there. A boy with messy gray hair that looks kinda similar to their classmate Kirishima, a shorter boy with icy blue hair, another boy with messy purple hair who looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, and a girl with messy pink dreadlocks and a pair of goggles on her head. Izuku and the boy who looks kinda like Kirishima then approach the podium and shake hands, with the other boy introducing himself as Tetsu, and his vice rep as Nirengeki Shota. Izuku then introduces himself in Kendo, with the other 2 students in the classroom introducing themselves. The purple-haired boy, who looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, introduces himself as Hitoshi Shinso from General Studies, while the pink-haired girl introduces herself as Mei Hatsume of the support course. Afterwards, the 6 students sit down, with Izuku and Kendo being the first to take the floor. Izuku then talks about the villain attack at the USJ, explaining about how the villains had made a plan to try and kill All Might, with the other class reps being extremely shocked at this news, with Tetsu saying, "There's no way that a bunch of villains can kill All Might." Shinso then speaks up, saying that if All Might got hurt after this attack, then they'll have more to look out for than they thought. While Hatsume doesn't really add much to this, since she doesn't really feel the villain attack would affect her gadgets, which she calls her babies. Afterwards, the 6 decide to talk about preparations for the sports festival, and from here, Hatsume pretty much takes over talking about the sports festival, revealing it to not only be a way for general studies students to potentially get transferred to the hero course, but it's also a way for support course students like her to show off their capabilities to support companies. Afterwards, the rest of the class rep meeting is kind of uneventful, since Hatsume just kept talking about her babies the whole time she had the floor. Eventually, the day of the UA Sports Festival arrives, as Fuyumi wishes the Todoroki twins good luck, and that she'll be rooting for them. Later, at school, the sports festival is about to begin, as Shoto approaches his twin, and declares war on him like cannon, before Class 1A heads out to the field to begin the sports festival. As the R-rated hero, Midnight, selects Izuku to come up to the podium and say the pledge. Izuku does as told, clearing his throat and beginning his speech. While we were at the USJ, we were ambushed by a group known as the League of Villains. But thanks to All Might, we've managed to come out of it stronger than before, because this attack brought us closer together. Many of you may feel pressured or lost. There are mysteries to the universe that we were never meant to solve. But who we are and why we are here are not among them. Those answers we carry inside. I am Izuku Todoroki, and I send this message to the League of Villains. Count your days, as we're coming for you! Now let's go beyond Plus Ultra! And that's where we'll leave this timeline off for right now. So, what did you guys think? How do you think the sports festival will go? Do you think Izuku will use the Roosevelt Smash against Shoto in the event they have to fight? Let me know in the comments below. And with that said, I'll get on out of here. Peace.